do have public comments if you still want to submit or get signed up. Please continue to get the comment cards to Myra. She will still be able to get them to us in time, for the public hearing. All right, welcome. It is Tuesday, August 11th, and we welcome you to our city council meeting. May we please have roll call motion.
You guys are just gonna have to engage your microphones. They're saying it's not very loud, but I can't really turn it up anymore.
Okay, is that better? Okay,
Councilor Schwartz,
Present.
Councilor Roden here, Councilor Boisvert,
Here.
Mayor Swartzler,
here.
Councilor Martin Willis.
Yeah.
Councilor Ford, here. Thank you.
Thank you. First up, we need to approve our meeting minutes. We have both the regular meeting from 7:14. Our work session from 7:29, and I'd be willing to entertain a motion to, I think, both are done.
So moved.
Second.
We have motion by Councilor Martin Lewis and a second by Councilor Source, and we do roll call.
Councilor Ford. Aye. Councilor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Councilor Boisvert.
Aye.
Councilor Roden. Aye. Councilor Ford.
Aye.
Thank you. And with that, we do have the first of our public comments tonight. So we do have 3 people that have signed up for visitor comments. We do ask that you state your name and city of residence. And we do have a limit of 3 minutes per person. As you can see, we have a lot of people here tonight and we need to be concise. Please and thank you with that. With that, first up is Edie Player. I'm not sure if I pronounced your last name right. And if you could just again state your name and just the city of residence and to come.
Mayor Schwartzler, councilors, thank you for this opportunity.
Sorry, 1 moment. Sorry, I forgot to turn down. Hold on. It runs out.
Technology.
I don't wait till the last minute. I apologize.
Mayor Schwartzler, councilors, thank you for this opportunity. I'm Phoebe Clare. I live here in Independence. I have 2 questions for all you all, but first I want to give a little context before I ask them. November 2024, there was a levy on the ballot that would have raised additional monies for parks, for the museum, and for the library. That levy failed with a vote of 61%, 39%.
She's asking.
Yes, I know. Then, today, less than 2 years later, I find out that there are going to be fees assessed on my water bill to raise additional monies for the parks, the museum, and the library. In my mind, a fee is, I think I understand what that is. It is something I pay when I use the service. If I go to the concerts at Waterfront Park, I pay a fee. If I don't go to the concert, I don't pay that fee. When it is on my water bill, a bill I have to pay, or there are extreme circumstances, my water will be turned off, there will be liens placed against my house. That is something I don't have discretion whether or not I pay it. So my question for all of you, first of all, keeping in mind that this the levy was on the ballot 2 years ago, and 61% of the people voted against it. What part of no do you all not understand? And then my second question is, you are all elected officials. We voted for you to represent us. If we said no, how are you representing us if you choose to tax us when we said no to that? And any of you who want to answer that, I'm happy to hear your answer.
Thank you. Just as a public reminder, we actually do not respond during the comments or public comment. Thank you. So next we got Corey Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I just wanted to say I've been over the past several months, of course, weeks, maybe days, looking at budget, seeing what I can find out. One of the things I observed was that over the last 4 years, there have been Thank you. There have been, $2.3 million in transfers to the general fund from water sewer storm. And they're unspecified, and there are specified transfers, but they're into like the loan fund, vehicle replacement, that type of thing. So I think we've heard from council members that transferring out without a repayment schedule is stealing. So I'm not asking the question, I'm putting it out there, but of course, not an answer. Where's the repayment schedule for that? I can't find one. That's $2.3 million. Another thing is, there is $824,000 increase over the 3 years in personal services and benefits in water sewer storm. And a couple other benefits, or a couple other funds. That adds up to almost $3 million. So I guess my concern is, with that heavy a burden on water sewer storm, are the infrastructure, our critical infrastructure, is going to suffer? Is it not going to be maintained? If that's a heavy load on water sewer storm. And it becomes a. Thank you.
Next up on public comment is Jennifer Reinstrom. What's the name? And as a reminder, please state your name and for the city of residence.
Mayors and member of council, thank you for allowing me to speak. For the record, my name is Jennifer Ramstrom. I'm a resident of West Salem. I am the chief of staff to State Representative Paul Evans. I just wanted to take a minute this evening to talk about Marilyn Morton and her profound legacy and the history of independence. And to take a minute to urge the council to take an aye vote honoring her life and legacy. I served on the Independent City Council with Marilyn, and I'm pretty sure I always made her and Mayor McCardle a little bit nervous. I was young and a little, you could say, rowdy. It was our second or third meeting, and we were at Central, and I saw a young group of high schoolers. Well, they were sharing their gum in the front row. And I looked over at Councilor Martin Willis, and she's, no, Jen. I looked over at Councilor Moore, no, Jen. I got up, walked off the stage. Marilyn then whispered, "What is she going to do now?" Like in just as sleep. Well, we don't really need to talk about what I did now, but Marilyn then grabbed my arm as I walked up on stage, and she looked at me and she said, "We're gonna have a talk after this." As soon as Mayor McCardle took the gavel, I walked out. I ran as quick as I could. I loved serving the city, and particularly under Marilyn as council president. Her guidance was tremendously missed at the last meeting. I think anybody that was here in the room could see the light shining down in the worst parts of the meeting. It was unreal. As I end, I'd like to read from an interview that Marilyn gave to Independence Hotel just not that many years ago. Independence Hotel. If you could return to Earth as a ghost, of course in the way future, what would your particular style of contacting people be? Marilyn answered, humor. Thank you.
All right, first up, mayor's report. I'm going to keep it very brief, given our agenda tonight. I just want to mention, I got back from the Oregon Mayors Association annual meeting. It was incredibly informative. I had a chance to meet with mayors from across the state. And there is a correlation to what we are experiencing here in our community with what's happening across the state. So now that was reassuring to us that there are other cities in the same situation. But the state of Oregon is having to figure out some financial issues that unfortunately we are all bearing the brunt of, as well as the economy and other factors that are just making things challenging right now. So with that, I'm going to see the rest of my time. Next up, we will do the council liaison reports. First up, Councilor Boisvert, the library board.
I can go pretty quick because we are on summer hiatus, so our next scheduled meeting will be.
Thank you, and continue here with Councilor Martin.
Okay, I will keep this brief. The Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance will actually be meeting this upcoming Thursday, so this is from last month's. That actually effective yesterday, our executive director has resigned. We'll be discussing that at Thursday's meeting. Biggest project, I think right now that we have on the books is our annual pit count, which is our annual point in time count of unhoused or temporarily sheltered folks within our community. That'll be taking place the single day in January. The exact date is still to be determined. And we will be looking for volunteers to assist with that project so that we can get the most accurate numbers possible. Specific to Polk County, our PATHS group, which is a consortium of providers and agencies that provide assistance or shelters to our unhoused neighbors. We'll be meeting tomorrow. The coordinator did provide me with some numbers for our FCO office here in Monmouth Independence. That we have total homeless individuals that have been housed in Polk County are 512. That's comprised of 230 kids, 163 parents, and 119 single individuals. So I'm not gonna give you all the numbers on that formatting. If you're interested, I'm happy to provide a copy of that, or you can contact Ryan over at the Polk County's FCO.
Okay, thank you. And next up is City Manager West.
Thank you, Mayor. My microphone works. Mine's gonna be a little longer. At the last work session, I had a question from the council regarding personnel costs. And specifically a statement that if we eliminated the city's management team, it would not solve the approximately $1 million structural deficit in the general fund. At the request of council, I asked finance to provide the underlying numbers so that you could understand exactly what I meant. And the first thing that's important to understand is how personnel costs are allocated. When an employee performs work for more than one city fund or department, the entire cost of that position is not charged to the general fund, which the general fund is the one that we're talking about with library, museum, parks. Instead, the cost is allocated among all of the funds that receive that employee's services. Those allocations are shown in our budget in Appendix 4. They're reviewed every year and adjusted as necessary to reflect the actual duties, workload, and responsibilities of each position. The purpose is to have each fund bear the cost of the work that is received from that employee. Now, a good example is our finance director. The finance director's charged 15% to the general fund. The remainder is allocated to other funds for the financial services provided to those operations. That is similar for the city manager, the human resources director, the city recorder, the IT director, the assistant city manager, and public works director. They're all allocated across multiple funds, not just into the general fund. And this becomes important when we talk about reducing general fund expenditures. Eliminating a position does not produce a general fund savings equal to that employee's entire compensation. The general fund saves only the portion of that cost that is actually allocated to it. So finance calculated these figures using what we refer to as fully loaded personnel costs. That means we're not just looking at wages. The calculation includes salary, as well as the city's cost for health insurance, PERS retirement contributions, payroll taxes, and other employer paid costs that are associated with the position. And that distinction is important because not all of those costs are within the city's control. For example, the city's health insurance cost is increasing approximately 14%, and we can't control that. PERS contributions and rates are established through the state retirement system, and we can't control that. The city must budget for those costs, even though we can't determine those rates. Now, I also had finance exclude our police chief from the comparison because police services have a dedicated public safety fee. And therefore, that position doesn't provide a useful comparison for the fee we're talking about. So with that, the total annual general fund cost of management positions fully loaded is $926,000. That's for the general fund, and we have $1 million deficit. So when I previously said that we could eliminate the city's management team and still not solve the deficit, the $1 million deficit, it wasn't intended as a figure of speech. The numbers are clear. Even in the purely mathematical scenario in which all of those positions disappeared and 100% of their allocated general fund personnel costs disappeared with them. And then when I say 100% allocated, that means finance is 15%. It's 100% of her 15%. The annualized savings is still less than the $1 million shortfall. And I do want to emphasize, this is a mathematical illustration, not a realistic operating scenario. The city can't simply eliminate its management structure and continue providing the same services. Those positions are responsible for financial management and reporting, human resources and labor relations, information technology and cybersecurity, legal and regulatory compliance, public works and utility oversight, land use and development, economic development, communications, records, grants, contracts, projects, and the day-to-day administration of city operations. So eliminating those positions would not eliminate those responsibilities. The work would either have to be performed by someone else, contracted out at an additional cost, or simply not be done. And reductions of that magnitude cease to be an organizational efficiency, and it becomes an inability to carry out essential city functions and meet the city's legal and operational responsibilities. Now, council also asked about the assistant city manager position, and that provides a really good example of how allocations work. Before becoming assistant city manager, the person that held that position was our economic development director. And as an economic development director, that position was pulled 50% from the general fund. The general fund cost for the economic development director was $92,244. The assistant city manager, who was the economic development director and is now the assistant city manager, continues to perform some of the economic development work, but also has a broader responsibility across city operations, which includes water, sewer, streets, grants, etc. Because those duties benefit multiple funds, the current allocation distributes the cost accordingly. So the current fully loaded general fund cost of the assistant city manager position is approximately $72,761. So despite the broader organizational role, the assistant city manager position costs the general fund almost $20,000 less a year than when it was an economic development director position. And that, along with the finance director, those examples illustrate why the allocation schedule matters. A job title or an employee's total compensation doesn't tell us what the position costs the general fund. We have to look at what work the position performs, which city operations benefit that work, and how the cost is allocated among those funds. Now, I want to be clear that these are annualized budget figures. They're useful for understanding the general fund impact of the positions, but they shouldn't be interpreted as the exact amount of the immediate cash savings that would result from a particular personnel action. Ultimately, it's a mathematical analysis. What the numbers demonstrate is that the city's structural deficit cannot be solved simply by reducing management staff. Even the extreme and operationally unrealistic example of eliminating the entire management team doesn't produce the sufficient general fund savings to address the approximately $1 million deficit. The allocation analysis helps explain why many of these positions serve the entire organization and only a portion of their cost is borne by the general fund. Addressing the structural deficit requires us to look more broadly at the city's overall revenues, expenditures, and service levels, rather than assuming that personnel reductions alone can solve the problem. So I hope that's provided clarity to the council based on the questions you asked last time.
City Manager West, can we get a copy of that?
Of course.
All right. Thank you, City Manager West. Next up, we have a presentation from Cindy Wilson, the Independent Downtown Association. Sorry, next up, we have a presentation from Cindy Wilson, the Independent Downtown Association president.
Well, I'm glad you guys all came. That's for me. Thank you, Cindy Wilson from Independence, and I want to thank the council. I asked for our organization, IDA, to have an opportunity twice a year or a couple times a year, whenever, to come and speak and let everybody know, not only the council, but everybody behind me and hopefully people who are listening understand what IDA does, because sometimes people hear the term IDA and they don't really know what it is, or they see things and don't understand, and so wanted to just come here and do that. Unfortunately, before I start with any of the good news, I did want to acknowledge the devastating loss of Marilyn Morton. To our team, Marilyn was our treasurer. She's obviously on our board, and she was a mentor to me and to our whole team. So I'm sorry, but I want to move on to something more positive because it's been such a bad couple of weeks. IDA, Independence Downtown Association, we hold 6 events a year, or have 6 events that we do. The first one, I'm just gonna go in chronological order, and I won't have to do this next time because you'll know it. But are the big red hearts that go up on the lamp light posts. We did about 116, I think, of them last year, and we have more light posts, but that is our biggest fundraiser. So I encourage everyone that's listening to really think about it and to do that, because that's how we do everything that you're going to hear from then on. And so after that is Love Local. So that's a scratch it card. And full disclosure, that used to be a city sponsored event, but that position was eliminated a year or 2 ago, and the city asked IDA if we could take over, and that is a scratch it card that you the businesses get to participate in, and everybody gets to win. Businesses get more people coming in, and it's a program that both the businesses and the public really like. We only had, just for those of you who have scratch it cards still laying around, we only had a 34% redemption rate. So there's a lot of those cards. Unfortunately, it's over. But just think about that left money on the table there. Also wanted to let you know that we worked that program in conjunction with the city of Monmouth. So Monmouth, when they heard we were going to do it again, said, we want to do that too. And so we both got together and came up with different looking and definitely specific to each of the towns. But we are working with our sister city. Next is our flower baskets, which go up right around Mother's Day. And those are all the baskets that you see around town and love and look at and go, aren't those gorgeous? That is 100% sponsored by IDA. So when you're buying the heart, you're kind of supporting those flower baskets. So we encourage you to love them, but support some of our other events as well. The next one that we just had in June was our last day of school. So that is an event that we provide resources, vendors, fun things to anybody who really wants to come down. But the only stipulation is no selling. So we provide the vendor space, we provide Kona Ice, we provide, let's see, this year it was Spider-Man and Elsa for photo ops. And for that event, we had approximately, best guess, is about 600 families that, the Y was there, the library was there, the museum was there, Ella Curran. So resources that families might need, during the summer months. And so, I can't remember how many books, like a couple hundred books were given away, there and signed up for the reading program. But our next event, which I really want everybody to participate in, is Hop and Heritage. And this is where we have a passport. I brought show and tell, but I'm not gonna do the show and tell. It's a passport. We're gonna have about 24 businesses on it. And you go around to the business gives you some type of freebie. And then you get your passport stamped and go on to the next. The thing that we're changing this year is at Parallel 45, there's gonna be a fresh hop fiesta. Now, I like beer, but I don't understand the fresh hop part yet, but it is a moment in time when the fresh hops are harvested and brought right to the brewers and they brew them. There are other fresh hop festivals in our state and around, thousands show up for these. We're hoping for 600 to 800 people. And so there's gonna be music on the streets, there's gonna be vendors on C Street. Valkyrie is gonna have a wine tasting, Elks is gonna have cornhole tournament. We encourage everybody to come and do that and have some fun. It's only 2-ounce tastings. Next is Halloween, and really, we used to provide candy to the businesses, but it got too expensive when we were buying just really hundreds and hundreds of pounds of candy. But we help make sure everybody, all our businesses know the influx of children and families that will come. This year, it's gonna be on Friday the 30th, so that on the 31st, kids can go to their own neighborhoods. And we also do that in conjunction with Monmouth. What we do is we plan the timing so that first it's us, and then they can hop on the trolley and first hit Central Plaza, which we opened it up to last year, and then on to Monmouth to get more candy there. I don't know how many people attend that, I don't have a count on that one. And last but not least for Ida is the lighted wreaths that go up on the light post at the end of the year, well, at December 1st usually. Again, that is something that Ida provides free of cost. There's nobody has to pay anything. It's just a nice thing that we do. Last but kind of not least is our newsletter. So if anybody wants to participate, understand what's going on, we have about 1,400 subscribers right now. But what is really amazing is our open rate. So our engagement rate is in the high 40s. So if anybody does social media, they will understand that that is a really high number. So we have people that are engaged with our community and wanting to know. And we have a newsletter that our businesses, and then we have a broader one for the public. I think that the only other thing is Main Street. So we are a part of Main Street America, which is again, a larger organization, but they provide grants, many of which our businesses have taken advantage of right now. The Opera House, there's gonna be condos above the Opera House or where the Opera House used to be. And that is in part due to a grant by Main Street. So it's really good organization. And Mayor Kate, you mentioned about the conference you went to, saying that our state, our city is like a lot of the state having some financial problems. Main Street, when I went a couple months ago to one of the main streets, we're all small cities, you know, and they were talking about very similar tragic library closures and things happening, that, you know, they're doing everything they can to keep the lights on, if you will. But anyway, thank you for your time, and I will be back, or somebody from Ida will be back.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you so much for all of this. All right, next up, we do have a proclamation, honoring the life, and service and legacy of Councilor Marilyn Morton, which I will now read. I think as many of us have reiterated, it has been a deep loss for our community, and we are feeling that profoundly. So a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Independence honoring the life, service, and legacy of Councilor Marilyn Morton. Whereas the City of Independence mourns the passing of Councilor Marilyn Morton, whose remarkable dedication to public service and unwavering commitment to the people of Independence enriched the community for decades. And whereas Councilor Morton faithfully served the citizens of Independence as a member of City Council beginning in 2002, including serving as council president, providing thoughtful leadership, steady guidance, and a deep commitment to responsible local government. And whereas Councilor Morton believed that strong communities are built through service and generously devoted countless hours to civic, educational, historical, cultural, and business organizations, including serving as treasurer and board member of the Independence Downtown Association, president of the Heritage Museum Society, board member of the Friends of the Independence Library, former treasurer and member of the Monmouth Independence Chamber of Commerce, former president of the Central High School Band Booster Club, former guardian, parent, volunteer, and famous for Jobs Daughters, and participating in organizations such as the Youth Business Academy, the Ash Creek Art Center, and Ash Creek Water Control District, and the PTA. I'm sure we have missed some. And whereas Councilor Morton worked tirelessly to preserve and celebrate the unique history and character of Independence, founding and coordinating the annual Ghost Walk, co-founding and serving as vendor coordinator for the Hawken Heritage Festival, authoring Hunted Independence, Oregon, preparing the Two Cities, One Community, otherwise known as 2C1C newsletter, co-founding the community readathon, teaching piano to generations of community members, and volunteering her time to countless community events, leaving a lasting legacy of civic pride, education, and community engagement. And whereas through every role she accepted, Councilor Morton demonstrated generosity, integrity, leadership, and an enduring belief that every act of service, large or small, could strengthen the community and improve the lives of others. And whereas the City Council wishes to express its profound gratitude for Councilor Morton's extraordinary contributions to the City of Independence, and extends its heartfelt condolences to her family, friends, colleagues, and all of those whose lives were touched by her compassion, leadership, and friendship. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Independence hereby honors the life and legacy of Councilor Marilyn Morton, recognizes her decades of dedicated public service and volunteerism, and expresses the community's sincere appreciation for her immeasurable contributions to the City of Independence. Be it further proclaimed that this proclamation be entered into the official records of the City of Independence as a lasting tribute to Councilor Marilyn Morton, whose legacy of service, leadership, and love for her communities will continue to inspire future generations. Dated this 11th day of August 2026. And with that, I would like to ask the council if anyone wishes to make a motion.
Sorry, what did that mean? Sorry, Councilor. Do you need to make a motion for the proclamation or make a motion for the I vote? I understand what you do, and I vote in honor of Marilyn Morton.
We have a motion by Councilor Core and a second by Councilor Martin. Maybe vote.
Councilor Source.
Aye.
Councilor Roden.
Aye.
Councilor Waller.
Aye.
Councilor Markowitz.
Aye.
Councilor Morton.
I
Eric Core, sorry.
Thank you. I know I don't need to vote, but I as well. And we do have a family member present here today, so I would like to give a copy of this.
Hey, Mayor, would it be okay if I say something
Yes.
very briefly? more for Marilyn's daughter. This year we had our second, our first annual reading challenge, council reading challenge, and I vowed to beat Marilyn this year. And, summer reading is over what, Patrick, on Thursday? I move that we close the council reading challenge and acknowledge that Marilyn probably won.
We have a motion by Councilor Ford and a second by Councilor Bloom. Is it safe to say all in favor? Yeah. Thank you for that. Next up, we do have. My notes here. The public hearing regarding the proposed closure of the City of Independence Library and City Manager West. And hand this over to you. I do have a statement that I would like to read as well. If you'd like to listen to it now or let you introduce things first.
You have a script.
The script, okay. I was going to read my statement prior to the script. Okay. So before we begin tonight's public hearing, I want to take a few minutes to talk about how we got here and more importantly, what tonight means. I will be candid, this is one of the most difficult things I have had to do as mayor. Tonight we begin the process required for the potential closure of our library. At the same time, we are also facing the closures of our parks and museum. I want to be very clear about something. Closing our library, parks and museum is not something this council wants to do, and it is a last resort. I don't think anyone sitting at this table wants to be here. I don't think anyone in the audience wants to be having this conversation here, although I do appreciate all of you showing up. And I know our staff does want to be here having this conversation. The fee was our attempt to keep these services on life support while we continue the much larger work of addressing the structural problems facing our general funds. We needed a solution at the beginning of this fiscal year, which for us starts in July 1st. We did not have the luxury of waiting for another levy election while continuing to spend money we simply don't have. There has been a lot said about our budget over the past several months, and I want to address some of it directly. There are people saying that council and staff simply haven't worked hard enough to find the money. That if we would spend more time going through the budget line by line, we would find it, that we just haven't dug deep enough. That there's plenty of money and that we are simply unwilling to make the difficult decisions necessary to fix this. That we have been lazy and taken it too long. That is not true and is disingenuous to the people who have spent countless hours on this budget. We have reduced positions, delayed investments, examined expenses, made difficult decisions, and asked uncomfortable questions. At some point, just cut more stops being a budget strategy and becomes a decision about what kind of city we are going to have. We still have to provide people these services, maintain streets and infrastructure, respond to emergencies, meet legal obligations, manage finances, process permits, maintain water and sewer systems, plan for growth, and do the hundreds of other things residents depend on every day, many of which they understandably don't think about until they need them. This isn't a scare tactic. There is no secret budget. There is no easy fix that everyone at City Hall has somehow overlooked. I'm suggesting otherwise may make for an appealing social media post, but it doesn't help our community solve the very real problem in front of us. It is also important to understand that independence is not alone. Cities across Oregon are confronting many of the same structural challenges. Rising costs, constrained property tax revenues, and increasing demands for services are forcing communities throughout our state to have meaningful conversations about libraries, parks, public safety, and other basic services. That doesn't make what is happening here any less meaningful, but it does matter. This isn't simply an independence problem, and it isn't evidence that the people working on it haven't tried hard enough. I respect the right for people to use the referendum process, but exercising that right doesn't eliminate the consequences of doing so. If enough signatures are collected, our community will vote. In the meantime, the city must prepare for the financial and operational realities of losing that revenue. That process itself has cost. The uncertainty has cost. Closing services has cost. And rebuilding programs, staffing, and community trust leader will have costs as well. Those consequences are real and our community deserves to understand them. But in spite of the challenges, I do still have hope. If this ultimately goes to the ballot, we as a community will get to decide what happens next. We can decide that having the library matters. We can decide that our parks matter. We can decide that preserving our community's history matters. I wish we weren't here, and I wish we had an easier answer. And I wish the conversation hadn't become as divisive as it has for our community. But at the end of the day, I do continue to believe in this community. We have gotten through difficult things before by showing up, asking questions, learning the facts, and working through our disagreements together, and we can do that again. Tonight's hearing is part of a process I desperately hope we would never be. But I also believe that tonight isn't the end of the story, and I want people to remember that this is only one step in a larger process that we need to do this. And with that, I do have a script for the public hearing. This evening, the City of Independence will hold the first of two public hearings pursuant to ORS 357.621 to hear comments regarding the proposed closure of the City of Independence Library. For anyone wishing to speak, we are asking you to use the speaker cards that are provided. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the mayor and you must state your name and city residence for the public record. I will now open the public hearing for comments regarding the proposed closure of the City of Independence Library. And it is 7:16 p.m. for the record. Maybe, please start the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. For the staff report this evening, I'm going to follow up on some of the process discussion that Mayor Kate discussed. And I want to provide additional background on how we arrived at this hearing and explain the process that brings this matter before the council tonight. As the council and community are aware, the city has been working through significant financial challenges in the general fund. As the city corrected long-standing financial practices, we identified a structural deficit that had previously been obscured by transfers from city's water, sewer, and street funds into the general fund. Addressing that structural deficit has required the city to evaluate both revenues and expenditures, including the level of general fund supported services the city can financially sustain. As part of that process, an ad hoc committee made up of community members reviewed the city's financial condition and potential options. That committee ultimately recommended creation of a community services and parks fee. When that recommendation came to the city council, the council could have considered proceeding with a fee at that time. Instead, the council referred the proposal to the budget committee, which is made up of both council members and community members, for additional review. The budget committee considered the city's financial condition, the proposed fee, and the city's proposed budget. The budget committee process included multiple opportunities for public input. Ultimately, the budget committee recommended a budget that included revenue from the community services and parks fee. The matter then came before the city council, where there was an additional opportunity for public comment. The council subsequently adopted the ordinance establishing the community services and parks fee. Following adoption of the ordinance, Chief Petitioner Greg Ellis filed a referendum petition concerning the ordinance. Under Oregon law, that filing placed the ordinance in abeyance. As a result, city staff could not proceed with collection of the fee. Because the revenue could not be collected, staff also had to proceed with contingency planning for city operations based upon the revenue legally available to the city that did not include the fee. That planning included reductions to affected general fund supported services, including potential closure of the library. That brings us to the matter before the council tonight. Oregon law establishes a specific process before a city may abolish or withdraw support from a public library. ORS 357.621 requires at least 2 public hearings held at least 90 days apart. It also requires notice to be published in a newspaper of general circulation for 2 successive weeks, at least 30 days before the first hearing. The city published those notices on July 1 and July 8. Tonight, August 11, is the first required public hearing. If it remains necessary to continue the statutory process, the second public hearing is scheduled for November 10. I also want to provide some context regarding the purpose of tonight's hearing. From working with the council, I know they value hearing directly from members of the community. Public testimony is part of this process. It becomes part of the public record and provides the council with information and perspectives to consider as it carries out its responsibilities. At the same time, it is important to understand the financial and procedural circumstances surrounding this hearing. The city adopted the community services and parks fee through an ordinance. A referendum petition was subsequently filed concerning that ordinance, and the ordinance is therefore presently in abeyance. The city cannot collect the fee while the ordinance is in abeyance, and the referendum will be presented to the voters at the November election. Separately, because the city's current financial circumstances require staff to plan for operations without that revenue, the city is following the process required by Oregon law regarding the potential closure of the library. Tonight's hearing is the first step in that statutory process. Nothing about tonight's hearing determines the outcome of the referendum. Likewise, the purpose of this staff report is not to advocate for or against the referendum. It is to provide the council and the public with the factual background, the city's current circumstances, and an explanation of the statutory process that brings this matter before the council tonight. With that, I conclude my staff report.
Council have questions for the staff.
So my fellow counselor, Evan Source and I have been going to the local farmers market just to talk to the community. And it's been really eye-opening, and it's been a great week for us to talk to the city, to the members of the community. And part of that is, I've heard at least from 5 people that when the petition came to their door, that they were given false information or misleading information. And so I really just wanted to ask the question to the city manager, if this petition goes through, what's the actual cost to the city for closing everything down and then potentially reopening it if development comes?
We've not been able to determine the actual cost. As you can imagine, it's a very complex budget, and we are at this time pulling that budget completely apart and reworking all of the numbers. We've gone through the steps for closure, and at this point, we are still running all of those numbers. They will not be insignificant. If you think about from our last work session, we talked about all of the steps for closure, and that includes putting fences up around Riverview Park and creating signage and putting it up on all of the trails, putting signage and blockage along the other parks, Pioneer Park, Sunset Meadows Park, Henry Hill Park, and closing the museum and working through all of those steps. There are a number of steps involved that will include staff time and expenses. So we haven't worked through all of those numbers, Counselor, but they are not going to be insignificant. A large part of this has also been outside legal fees for the referendum process and the time we've spent with them. We'll pull all those together. The council has asked a number of times, we'll pull all of that together when we can. We don't think we'll have all of those numbers until potentially September. And then we won't have final numbers until after November.
So at this point, I know the last few weeks, we've been waiting for confirmation on validation of referendum signatures. Has that been at this point received?
No, we've not received certification of the signatures. They have until, I want to say it's the 24th, is the date that they have to have that to us. I am pulling that from memory, so please don't quote me, but it is the end of August. And if the certification shows that there are enough signatures, then we'll move forward with closure. If the certification does not show that there are enough signatures, then we will move forward with putting a fee forward, and that would go in September. That would go in September.
I heard from some community members today that they still feel that the fee is the same as the levy was. Can we talk a little bit about the difference between what the levy would have done versus what the levy and how much revenue is generated from the levy proposal versus the fee proposal?
So I don't believe, Counselor, that I brought all of my data for that, but The levy, if I recall correctly, was somewhere around $600 a year. And the fee is around $200 a year, using very broad strokes, just because I don't have my data
That's $600 on an average home.
on an average home. So the difference, the levy was to bring our services back up to the level that it was before we started reducing services. So we've removed, Patrick, remind me, was it 3 or 4? It's 4. 3.5 FTE, so 4 people from our library, and we've reduced hours of services. And we have reduced the number of parks people we have, including summer park help, part-time help, full-time help. We've reduced contract services to care for the parks. We've gone through a number of reductions. So the levy would have put us back to where we were before we did those reductions. The ad hoc committee, when they reviewed everything, they looked at what they called life support. And that is what the fee was meant to be pursuant to the ad hoc committee. So it's a reduced amount to keep the services that we have today, as opposed to putting it back to where it was before. And that's why it's one of the reasons it's a reduced amount, is it's just keeping that at the service level we have now. There were a number of reasons the ad hoc committee did that. And they would be far better at explaining it than I can, but in general, the city has significant historic debt, old debt. Much of it will come off over time. The life support is to bridge the gap between where we are now and where we could be when the debt comes off. In addition, we have an urban renewal agency that is underperforming. If that URA starts to perform as it was indicated that it would at the time it was created, that could also adjust and put more money into the general fund. At this point, the URA is not paying the city back the full amount that it should have been paying for all of the loans that the general fund put into the URA. If it starts to perform, it would be paying that back, and that of course changes things. If the city we are working on economic development. If we are successful in economic development, takes a long time, as the council is aware. If we are successful in bringing in a large employer, a large industry, that can affect the tax revenues and increase them quite a bit. As everyone knows, because I talk about it all the time, housing does help, but not a lot. And in fact, we have to increase some of our services because of measures 5 and 50, reducing the amount of revenue. So we really look at commercial and industrial. If we get a new industrial in, that could change it. So this life support is to bridge the gap between all of the other things that we're working on doing. Does that answer your question, Councilor?
One more follow-up. You know, I turned off my mic. Hey, Councilor Rhodes. I heard that we're so short staffed at the library that we had city hall staff coming in and meeting library folks so that they could go to the phones. Is that true?
Patrick, may I ask you to?
Thank you, Councilor. Assuming everyone didn't hear the question, I'll just repeat it. You've heard that we have city hall staff covering library lunches for staff. That has been that is not an everyday occurrence, but when we do have a single staff member out for illness or any other type of leave, then we look at that. 2 people out, and we absolutely rely on someone else to come over just so that we can step away from the desk and eat lunch.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify that, yes, it was $600 that we were gonna put on homeowners for the levy. So $600 for your property taxes for a year. But this is $200 for every apartment unit dwelling in the entire city. So just to make sure you understand that where this large amount of money is actually coming from. It's coming from everybody now, not just property tax. The other thing is, and this is a question to the city manager list, it was Chief Mason who was our intern and city manager at the time, who decided we were no longer gonna be doing intertransfer loans. Is that correct?
Thank you for your question, Counselor. You are absolutely correct. When I came in 2022, interim city manager Bob Mason, and I'm just gonna put a plug in here, and I know Tino would agree with me. Bob was not only an excellent police chief, he was an excellent interim city manager. When we went into the first budget, he showed exactly what was happening, and he made the determination to start the shift, and he did about 50% of the shift during his term as interim city manager, and then I completed the shift over.
And the reason I mention that is because I know all of us love Chief Mason and the excellent job he did, but maybe in retrospect, maybe we should, and I wasn't for city intertransfer loans, but maybe in retrospect, we could have had these happen for another 3 to 5 years to bridge that gap, to extend that lifespan, so that we didn't have to be in this situation where we have to charge people these fees and close our parks if they don't pass. We could have maybe considered using a not such a cold turkey method to stop this. And I don't like it. I'm just telling you, I want our parks, I want our libraries, but maybe we should have considered that instead of just going cold turkey on this. Maybe we could have looked in other areas of our budget on this, so that we could have that 3 to 5 years of life support that our community needs to have our community services maintained.
I'd like to add on to that or clarify that. I do remember that we did a step, if I remember correctly, like we didn't stop, we reduced down the amount of transfers, knowing that it was going to be painful. At the same time, we cannot keep kicking this can down the road. There are structural deficits that if we keep doing that, we just keep delaying this and pushing it off onto another council to deal with later on down the road. And at that time, that hole is just getting bigger and bigger. So this is a policy decision that council did adopt to give direction to Manager West and staff, that we have to come up with a bigger solution to this than to just continue transferring money and hope that someday down the road, this will get fixed. I wanna commend, Finance Director Carey and Moody that was before her for making a very structured list of all of our transfers, all of our debt, so that for the first time, we have a really comprehensive look at when some of this debt is going to start rolling off. Because as City Manager West indicated, there are multiple different things that could happen. We don't always have control over that. Debt will start rolling off. That's amazing. We want to keep on that path. And we need to keep on that path so that debt starts rolling off. Because that will bring some more breathing room. The URA hopefully will start performing more. That's a good goal. And then economic development. But those don't happen overnight. So we have to somehow bridge this gap or get through this messy part right now before we can get to that sustainability piece. I think I speak for myself, I think I speak for goals with City Manager West, just based on the conversations that we've had. We can't keep looking at the next 3 months, 6 months, year in front of us. We have to be thinking about sustainability for our community 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. Because what's been happening is we just keep delaying this conversation. We keep doing these little infills and hoping that something is gonna happen in the future. We have to, as painful as it is, do cold turkey or somehow figure this out so that we're not having this conversation 5 years from now. That we are putting the city on a path to financial sustainability.
One thing, if I may, to complete my answer, one of the things that the council considered and has been considering is when the money is pulled from water and sewer and streets, there's no money to do the maintenance, there's no money to do the improvements. And that was a large component of the discussion. The city had failing infrastructure. The lagoons hadn't been cleaned in decades, and it was causing the city to actually smell. And that was because there wasn't the money to remove the biosolids because the money had been pulled over to the general fund. Our water infrastructure is failing. We just had to spend, at this point, I think we're around 25,000, but it could go up, on an emergency repair at our South Well field because the pipes were so degraded and rusted that it was a significant leak underneath the lines. We had to repair C Street sewer lines because they were so degraded that we actually had sewer bubbling up. So if we had continued to pull money from water, sewer, and streets, the degradation of our infrastructure would have continued. I don't know what that looks like, but I know the amount, when I came in, we had over 20 infrastructure projects that must be done in order to bring the city into an ability to move forward without failure. When I came in, we had significant DEQ fines built up from years prior that were due to just an inability to afford to do what needed to be done. And at this point, we have not had a DEQ fine. We did have one that was due to something from before, but the DEQ fines were thousands of dollars that were paid out that we then couldn't use for the sewer that was failing. So that's part of the answer, and this is all a discussion that had to be made by the council, but those are other pieces that were considered as well.
I think it's also important that if you go back to Aircom loan, think about how much this infrastructure is going to cost 10 years. So us borrowing this money 10 years ago from the utility fund, what we could have spent 10 years ago to fix those things is now going to cost 2, 3, 4 times as much. So I'm gonna say it again, I know people have had objected, we're stealing. These Aircom loans are stealing from the people of Independence, because now the people of Independence are gonna have to pay more to fix that same infrastructure. So it's the only right option to stop doing it. And stop taking money that we're telling the people of Independence is going to fix our utilities and actually rectify the situation.
In essence, we have been taking money from the utility funds to do exactly what we're proposing in this week. It was going to support our library, parks, and museums. We have made an effort to make that very intent. So instead of bearing that in the utility bill and charging utility rates for it, we are stopping that interfund practice and calling it what it is. There's no further questions. I do genuinely sincerely appreciate that we have people in the audience tonight that are wanting to do public testimony. We do have a big staff. We have over 20 people. So we are asking people to limit their comments to 3 minutes. We will not be responding to comments. With that, I will continue on with our script. We wish to hear from everyone who's interested in this discussion. Please limit your comments and questions to 3 minutes only, and remember to state your name and city of residence for the record. We are going to be taking testimony in order of speaker list. All right. First up, forgive me if I am not able to get through everyone's handwriting. Ms. Bradley.
Sorry that took so long. I don't like being all coordinated. So I'm gonna try to make this.
Just for the record, would you need to have the state your name?
My name is Midge Brandon. I live in Independence. I'm trying to make this, as pointed as possible. And you're not gonna like what I have to say, probably. We have to pay for what we want. That's the way it is. Whatever happened in the past, happened in the past. We have to deal with the way it is. We can do what they do in Europe. Everybody has to pay to use the library. We can do what they do in many big cities. The parks are fenced off. You get to use them if you have a key. Is that what you want? I wouldn't think so. Let me tell you a little bit about the history of libraries. Benjamin Franklin was the one who came up with the idea of the free public library. Because he believed in democracy. And he believed that if we did not have a free public library, people would not be able to read because most people couldn't afford a book. I can barely afford it now. So that's where that came from. And that was in the late 1700s. By the mid 1800s, people were settling the West. One of the very first things they did, the ladies usually, they got together and they got a free public library. And the men said, well, here's a fine piece of property, we'll make a park out of it. And they did. It's civilized. You know what Monmouth says about us, right? We're not civilized, right? Yeah, I've heard that. I tried to join their book club. I have a PhD. I wasn't good enough, I lived in independence. You surely don't want to back that. I wouldn't think so. The library is for everyone. It helps little kids learn to read. What's one of our major complaints about our education? Kids can't read. Well, I was a teacher for 25 years. If you want kids to do something, you have to start damn early. Miss Jo at the library starts damned early. And she teaches kids English, and she teaches them to read and to love to read. You have a treasure. You don't want to get rid of that.
We are, and I did see, we do have the ability, for us counselors to ask follow-up questions. Since we have, a large audience to please, if you have a question, we.
May I say one thing more? Promise, it's just one thing. Cover your ears if you have tender ears. Okay? This was a saying seen on the back of a motorcycle back in my day. Cash, grass, grass. Nobody runs for free.
Next up, we have Jennifer McIntosh.
Oh, that,
Lucky number 2.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I wanna follow that, I'm doing my best. Hello, my name is Jennifer McIntosh and I am an Independence resident. I'm here to testify regarding the notice to abolish the public library. A library that has helped shape the person that I am today. I want to start by saying something very important. That funding a library is a choice. It's making a choice about where general fund dollars go. As an example, the city added a full-time in-house city attorney, which we have all heard so much about. It continues to fund a standalone economic development department, as well as an in-house IT department that similarly sized Oregon cities like Cottage Grove and Silverton contract out instead of staffing internally.
I'm not saying those choices are wrong. What I am saying is that they are choices. I'm asking the council to weigh the library against these other choices openly, rather than treating it, its closure as inevitable. Second, the library is already written as part of the city's goals. The library isn't outside the city's plan, it is inside. The council's own adopted vision, mission, and goals commits the city, and I quote, sustain public services and assets, including streets, buildings, technology, utilities, public safety, parks, museums, and libraries to high standards. The city's vision statement also commits independence to celebrating its multicultural heritage, and the library and museum are the city's department doing that work day to day. Closing the library isn't just a budget cut, it reverses the goal that this council has already adopted. By choosing to not prioritize funding the library, we go backward as a community, not forward. I ask the council to direct staff to show side by side what keeping the library funded costs against other commitments before a final decision is made. Thank you very much for considering this. I'm happy to meet with each of you with some ideas that I have come up with that I didn't want to include because I'm short on time, didn't have the ability to make sure they are accurate before testifying. Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask City Manager West about?
Yes.
City Manager West,
Yeah.
City Manager West, we.
Right.
I just wanna.
We have terrible tech.
Yeah.
Hear me?
Nope. It's just gonna look out.
I mean, I'm happy to talk about.
Yeah, just talk about.
All right, so just wanna make sure that I understand clearly. IT, I'm under the impression we share IT with Monmouth. There's a MOU understanding where we're coordinating and sharing costs there. And then the other question I wanna make sure I understand is economic development. Some of that is not general fund funded, correct?
So, IT, is anyone else gonna ask a question? So IT is, we do have an agreement with Monmouth. When I came, we had one IT person to run the entire city. Which means, no vacations, nothing, and it was really hard when he took time off or he got sick. So we began working with Monmouth, and we do have an IGA, and that IGA means that we have one other person on staff, and that staff person takes care of Monmouth, and we receive 5% for our IT director managing that one person. And that one person provides backup to our IT director for his vacation, if he gets sick. And then we have a part-time position that is within IT that is funded from multiple funds that also backs that up, and they handle more if the microphone goes bad, or if the printer goes out, or if we can't access our computers. So the IT department is actually bringing money in through that IGA. And in addition, our IT department has contracts with other agencies that they're working for on an hourly rate to bring money into the general fund. So we have certainly looked at other opportunities to bring money into the general fund, and you'll see that in a revenue line. And then economic development. So economic development, we had an economic development fund that we moved the money from that into the general fund to help support the general fund. We've moved as much money that's within the general fund realm into the general fund solid. And so part of that is funding outside consultant to help us with economic development. And then, as I talked about in answer to the council's questions before, our economic development director is a part of the staff still. He's just not doing all economic development. He is doing a lot of other work, and so we are running him across funds. And so the pull is not 50%. And we've actually saved $20,000 by doing that. Does that answer your question,
Yeah.
Counselor?
Thank you. Next up, we have Rebecca Schrader.
I'm Rebecca Strader, I live in Independence, I am a renter. There seems to be an understanding that it seems that it's only considered the homeowners are the people that pay property tax. I can assure you that renters pay property tax through our rent. I voted for the levy. And I'm very disappointed that we've come to this point. As previous speaker said, public libraries, along with churches and schools, were institutions that were planted as America spread to the West for all the good and damage that happened. But it's amazing how every small town seems to have a library, many of them early on sponsored by the Carnegies. This public library is, I realize I've only heard recently that the public library in Independence is relatively new. But I would hope that as a desirable community for us to live in, that a public library would not be optional. So I am here to say I think the fee was a good idea. It would show up on my rent, just as the public safety fee showed up. And I'm willing to pay that. Not only do I benefit from the library, but some of our community members are least able to afford computers, etc., are able to benefit from the many programs that are set out for our children, no matter who they are, where they live in Independence, how much their parents make. So again, for the good of a community and for a community that will draw people, I hope that we will find a way to keep the public library open, and I hope eventually to get back to the staffing it once had. It's a place where adults meet and can have access to technology. It's a place where children learn so much more than just to read, which is essential. It is a place that loans out things like sewing machines. This library is a center for our community in so many ways. I'm sure we will try to find some way to keep this open. Thank you.
Next up, we have Nathan Christensen.
Mayor, if I may, very quickly, I apologize. It seems we're having tech trouble, so we have taken the extra microphone, and I believe Councilor Source has it. And if you need it, we can move it along. Just so everyone knows, we have looked at fixing the tech in here, but it is around $100,000, and we just cannot afford to fix that. So the microphones, if you'll have a little grace, we'll just use them for tonight. And thank you for your patience.
City Council, city staff and public, my name is Nathan Christensen. I'm a resident of Independence. Very well know me by some of the service that I've provided the city. I'm actually the president of the Library Advisory Board currently. I've served 3 going on 4 years on the Independence Budget Committee. I just wanted to take this time to publicly state my support for the library. And I think also, speaking on Maryland's behalf, we're just giving her a kind of a public moment of recognition of her support for the Friends of the Library. I also want to make sure that, the library staff who I meet with monthly can see me up here publicly supporting them, and they know that they have their library advisory boards back. when this referendum was first announced, I was. It was frustrating for me, because of all the work that we had done, in the public forum and the ad hoc committee and the budget committee. When I started getting some of the reports and, the communication that came in for how the referendum was being communicated or how it was being described, it became insulting. That's why I'm very frustrated right now, kind of insulted, to be honest, because of all the work that we did, and this referendum is why we're here in this meeting right now. And it's because of how it was kind of put forward in bad faith, communicated incorrectly. Sometimes I have to maybe even assume it was intentional, I don't know. But we could say we're here to support the library, the parks and museum, but the reason we're in this meeting right now is because of this referendum that, in my opinion, was put forward in bad faith. And it doesn't seem to be supporting what we're trying to do here, which is democratic policy, public meetings and whatnot. So I just wanted to put that out there and put my name to that statement that this is a horrible situation to be in because of this referendum. And whoever is in charge of it, whoever has it, whoever can have the power to recall it, I just really encourage them to do so, because we shouldn't be here right now. This is just not what we need to do. Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Fish. We're allowed to ask questions, right?
Yeah, no,
The microphone just say your mind.
Okay, Mr. Christensen. I was wondering, I haven't heard, can you give me an example of where the referendum was misleading?
I think I'll probably defer that to Councilor Bourware and Councilor Soares, who actually sat at multiple farmers markets downtown and talked to a lot of people that were giving them information they heard about the people that were asking for signatures and describing what the fee was, or what the levy was, or the conflict between the two, or some of the stuff we've actually explained in detail here tonight. I think you should probably ask your fellow city councilors.
Okay, thank you, I just wanted to see what your opinion was, because you gave it. And because our people at home might not have been able to hear Mr. Christensen's response, he basically indicated that he would leave it to Councilor Boisvert and Councilor Soares, who had spent time out in the community over the last few weekends and had heard these comments. Is that an accurate reflection, Mr. Christensen?
All right, thank you. I just want to note this for the record that Terry Murphy is in favor of this item but does not speak, so thank you for that. Logan Barr is up next.
My name is Logan Barr. I actually live in Monmouth, but I volunteer at the museum. And I think what I'm most concerned with the closure of the library, museum, and parks is sort of those little things. I think it would be a disservice to our city and the small businesses that would miss out on hundreds of thousands of people coming in from out of town to attend events like the concerts, ghost walks, things like that. I'm also concerned with the park closures, such as the Imagination Garden that supplies fresh fruit and vegetables to El Coran Food Bank. That would be taking food out of the mouths of hungry people if these parks closed. I also just on the fee, $12.65 sounds like a lot, but for $12.65 a month, you can take your kids to the museum, the library, and the parks for free. You could buy one movie ticket with $12 and you get a couple hours. But the fee would maintain all of these things that are so pivotal to the community. So I just think that if we had to close these things down, that would really be a disservice. The museum also represents the history of not only independence, but Monmouth. We have a giant archive that is filled with a lot of stuff that we haven't even got to. So there's a lot of voices, a lot of history, a lot of real life people whose stories aren't being told that we desperately want to have. So, once again, I just think it would be a disservice to lose these public services.
We have, Bradley Marketing.
Good evening, council. I'm Bradley Carkinen. I live in Independence. I am here tonight to speak in support of the library. I want to call attention to the ridiculousness of the situation we find ourselves in. Shame on former city manager Greg Ellis for creating this mess we find ourselves in. Both for setting up the city for failure by financing this building we are currently in without a vote of the public. If he had followed best practice and gone out for a vote of the public, we would have had a dedicated revenue stream to pay for this building. The same Greg Ellis is the person behind the referendum, which is why we find ourselves here tonight. Is it not ironic that the same man that saddled the city with millions upon millions in debt without a vote is suddenly demanding a vote for a $12.65 net increase in a fee to fund critical services for our community? Without this fee, we face the loss of our library, a cornerstone of our community. Believe me, I know times are hard. I was laid off from my job of 5 years at the end of August of last year. Since then, I have been juggling multiple contract and part-time jobs to barely make ends meet. Even so, I grew up well below the poverty line as the eldest of 3 with a single mom. We were dependent on our local library for access to books and the internet. Shocking, I know, to hear that someone of my age did not have access to reliable home internet until their junior year of high school. My siblings and I were voracious readers. Our mom would not have been able to afford to fuel our love of reading if it were not for our library. It is because of my time at my local library as a kid, I grew up to be someone that volunteers. Be it the Friends of the library board, or the budget committee. I want this generation of kids to have the same access to the resources that I had and more. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jasper Smith from Independence. And I would like to express my support for keeping the library open and accessible to the public. I'm disappointed in my neighbors for not voting for the recent levy and for referring the recent ordinance to a referendum. I hope my neighbors will be responsible adults and vote to fund the library and pay for what is important for ourselves and for our children. I don't believe anyone wants to close the library. Some of my neighbors seem to think the city should prioritize existing funding differently to accomplish the goal of keeping the library open. I understand that in politics and in the community, we don't always get what the way that we want from them. I support the ordinance and will vote yes to fund the library, museum, and parks. I know many of my neighbors will vote no because they don't want to pay a fee. I believe they still want the library open, and a vote against the fee is not necessarily a vote against the library in people's minds, even though it may be in reality. I hope the majority of my neighbors will vote to keep the ordinance, but even if they do not, I hope the city will continue to make efforts to save the library for the community. I am also disappointed in the city and sympathetic to those who think the city could prioritize differently. I am concerned with the city's narrative of police as essential and things like the library is inessential. I am sympathetic to the city wanting to end the practice of interfund transfers, but I don't think it's a principle worth closing the library over. I support the ordinance and the fee first of all, but if it is overturned, I would support a new ordinance and fee inclusive of all city services adding to the general fund or increasing the public safety fee and moving more general fund to the library. I also think we should reduce funding for the police before closing the library. Funding the library is a better investment in public safety, community development, economic development, and human development than funding police, which is half the city budget, which I think is excessive. The library is an essential part of the overall health of our community. Our homes are not just our houses, but also the community that we live in. If we don't invest in our homes, both our houses and the community, they will not continue to be safe and livable.
Greg Ellis? Yes, Greg Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor. Greg Ellis, City Independence. I don't think there's anybody in here, you said at the beginning of this meeting, who wants that library closed, nobody. This gentleman just said, and Councilor Roden also talked about the inter-fund loans. They're not their loan transfers or inter-fund loans. And there is a couple of bonds that are going off in a couple of years. And that's gonna free up $800 and some thousand. Why can't we do something like that, do an inter-fund loan and keep this library open? There's ways to do it. And we can talk about the personnel in general fund all day long. And I agree with City Manager West. There's not necessarily the need to look at all the funding. We can argue about in-house attorney all day. But there's ways to keep that open other than personnel. There's ways to do it, inter-fund loan. And Bob Bass is a good friend of mine and bless his heart. But if you need to do that, in place of keeping the library open, in place of closing the library, there might be something to consider. There's $19 million of contingency in your budget. Look at the summary page on page, I think, 17. Left-hand side, you got about $19 million contingency. So, in all funds. So, I'm wrong, I could be. But there's ways to do it without the personnel issues. And I just think that the council should look at this in a different way. And maybe there are options. I mean, you were quoted in a recent article, Mayor, as saying closing the library is not an option. Shouldn't be. There's ways to keep it open.
Which article was that?
I don't know if it was in the Statesman or if it was on the city website. I don't remember, sorry. I did see that. Can we find a interview? Okay. But anyway, I just think there is a person in this place that wants to see the library closed. I was here in 2000, I came in 2000, John McCardle had passed a geo bond to get that thing built, portion, real small geo bond. And we started building that. And it was really a great thing, grand opening, and Robin Pachetti was one of the best there is. And a few years later, we started the amphitheater, and great teamwork. I think we got some really creative things we wanted that put together. Still can't believe it's there. It's a gem and a goal for this community. And I just think there are other options if people would be open to at least looking at that. 6 minutes.
Next up, we have David Klein.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I am, as you said, David Klein. I live in the city of Independence. I have been a city management professional for over 40 years. Between Greg and I, we worked almost 20 years managing this particular city. I've had 14 cities that I've worked as their city manager, most recently in Agnes, Oregon. I am absolutely for the keeping the museum, the library, the parks open. Odds are, if we get to the point where there's an election, I will probably hold my nose, even though I signed the petition so that we could have an election. I'll probably hold my nose and vote for it. I can afford to do that. That isn't the point. Since December of 2024, I have been offering some form of assistance, some form of guidance, some form of ideas to this council, to your city manager. And I've offered to join your financial advisory committee when you've had openings. I've offered to join your budget committee when you've had openings, because I think I present you different choices. And Mary, you've been fairly consistent saying that my opinion is not welcome. I'm here to say if that offer remains open to you, should you want to, and I'll tell you why, because I think what you're looking at is a false choice. Should not be just about whether you retain those services or whether you impose a fee or not impose a fee. There are other ways to look at this problem. One of the things you could do, and I'm pretty sure most people would be a little bit more happy with this approach, is to say, we will impose this fee, or we'll reduce your sewer and water bill by the same amount. So it'll be a net zero impact on your bill. So if I was told that you're going to put a fee in place to support parks and museum, the library to the tune of $19.65. And you said at the same time that you will be reducing the cost of my utility bill by $19.65. I think most of the people in this room probably wouldn't even be here tonight to tell you that this is a problem. So what I'm asking you to is consider, for the time being, looking at that option. And I'm thinking that you've had a lot of bad information this evening, and you've had a lot of bad information over time. If you look at your budget, page 17, and I'm sure this would be Mayor, I'm sure this would be City Manager, West, you had a $10 million error in your sources. On page 18, your totals, you had a $1.5 million error in your uses. Your budget is suspect. The information you have is suspect. You're relying on that to make a false choice. I would urge you to stop the water and wastewater treatment plants for $60+ million for those two plants to serve one building permit in 2 years isn't justified. You need to look at your budget more realistically. And you've had an hour of bad information. Unfortunately, we only have 3 minutes to rebut it. If you have questions, I'm more than happy to respond to those, since that doesn't come into my 3 minutes. Bottom line is Greg is right, $19.5 million. It is your beginning fund balance, or it will be if your budget was stated properly in your own sources, but it wasn't.
Thank you.
So I apologize to everybody on council who's heard this before, but one of my reasons for joining city council in the first place is my dad stopped taking showers because he thought he could reduce his water bill. And I've said that many times. I'm from a poor family. It's just the way it is. Do you think we've had a high water bill and a high base water bill in this community to cover those transfer loans that we've had in the past?
Yeah. Your current water bill is high because you haven't reduced it to offset the amount of the reduction in those transfers. So when you stop transferring something in the neighborhood of $2 million a year to the general fund, you should have reduced your water and sewer bill by that amount. In other words, it should have been refunded back to the people in the first place. Instead, it's got the same artificially high level for years while you run into this general fund problem because you starved it of $2 million a year. That's a bit of a complicated response, but that's what's going on. Instead of going on a public works spending spree in water and wastewater, it's pretty much gilding the lily over there with brand new equipment, city engineer that really, for a city that only has one building in 2 years, really justify a right-of-way inspector, that's again an engineer that you don't really need. So you've been adding staff, you have 5 more staff than we had when I was city manager 7 years ago. So there's a lot of misinformation about what's going on with your budget, but unfortunately I haven't been invited to the table or nor has Greg to talk to you about it, other than this 3-minute window that we get occasionally. And also, it was not stealing from special person. You really don't know what you're talking about.
So point of clarification, City Manager West, if I may, thank you, Mr. Klein. Can you provide some clarification around this idea that utility rates are some arbitrary number that we just sort of create? They are tied to actual projects that need to get completed, and there is no windfall that we have.
Correct, Mayor. We had a shift in Public Works and we started to complete master plans. And for those of you who aren't city managers or don't work in government all the time, a master plan basically looks at what this community needs over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And it says you're going to need these projects. And these projects are expected to cost this much. Those are completed by experts. The city manager doesn't do it. Experts in that area does it. Those master plans are then looked at, the community gets to do input, and then the council adopts them. In there is a capital improvement plan. And that capital improvement plan, then another expert, again, this is not the city manager, It's an expert, comes in and they look at that capital improvement plan and they say, in order to do these projects, we need to have these rates. Now, we started doing that for sure. It started when Bob was here in 2022. We updated the master plan and we've updated water and we've updated sewer, and now we're working on stormwater. And so there's been no windfall in water and sewer because the money that is in there now that Mr. Klein has suggested we return is being used for those projects that weren't done before. So when there was deferred maintenance and the lagoons smelled because of it, we still had to remove that. And we still had to have money to remove that. And so the money that is now not being pulled from the general fund is actually being used for the water and the sewer that the community is paying. So that's some clarity, and it's being used in accordance with the experts. And we've had a number of experts come in. So we had Rob Booty, who is one of the foremost financial experts in the state, now retired, who came in and looked at all of our finances. And he did that after Bob Mason came in, and he said, yep, Bob Mason was right. And then we actually received a grant, and HUD paid for 2 other financial experts who between them had, I think one had almost 40 years and one had 45 years of experience as financial experts. They came in and they looked at our finances and they provided a report and they said, yeah, Rob Moody's right. So we've had 3 financial experts, we've had water experts, we've had sewer experts, but all these experts come in and provide reports. And so what Mayor Kate is talking about is that the funds that are in water and sewer are being used for water and sewer. And there's no windfall, there's no extra.
Thank you.
I understand. I was also.
So, okay, good. I got a quick follow-up, City Manager West. Isn't what Mr. Klein kind of describing is using a credit card to pay for things and then saying, I just got all this money in my bank account because I've been spending my allowance on my credit card. So now this bank account is free money, because the reality is there's deferred maintenance that we weren't spending the money from the utility fund to pay for, correct?
That is correct. There is significant deferred maintenance.
And not to mention now, because there's interest on the credit card, right? Everyone knows there's interest on a credit card. It's gonna cost us more to do that deferred maintenance than it would have 10 years ago, correct?
Costs have gone up significantly. That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Sylvan.
I'm gonna be a little petty here. My mic works. To your recollection, over the last 4 years that we have been struggling with the budget and making cuts and coming up with more sustainable practices, has Mr. Klein or Mr. Ellis ever attended a budget committee meeting?
I am going to say that my recollection is not 100% perfect, but I believe Mr. Klein came to one, yes.
All right, next up, we have Dawn, if we can go to Clark. Oh, Clark. Go to Clark, is that the better pronunciation of it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just hold it kind of like this,
We can hear you great.
and then look like a rock star.
Yeah.
Well, I'm from Monmouth, but I am I am a volunteer at the Independence Fund. I do the story time of Jolene, walk around with that. Sometimes I do it myself. And
I also help with the various programs that are at the Independence Library. I think the Independence Library is a different library than most. It's not quiet. It's quite lively. We had a project that Home Depot would craft for the kids to put together, families to put together. There were 61 people working and hammers banging. I think that's what a library is. It's something that's lively. It brings in the community. And just to talk about our summer projects that we have, it's a part of our children's summers, our families' summers. And it's generational. It's a tradition. It's not something that just started. People come to story time who came as children and are bringing their children. I think those are the kinds of traditions that make Independence special. And I think that's why people come to this town, because it's open and it's different. I've talked to people who have just come here and they say, that's what we like about Independence. It's livable. And we feel like we're part of it. I think those are the things that we need to look for, and our kids. So when I first started doing story time, Jolene told me, she goes, don't worry about it. You know, kids all run around, but they gotta start somewhere. They gotta learn what it is to be in a library. I've been doing it for a while now. Sure enough, they're listening. They're learning to share. The families that come, they talk to each other. That's a connection place for them. And so I was once told by a librarian in Independence that the library is the heart of the community. And so I'd like to think that we're going to continue that tradition. And so what I did was, I was walking around.
Sorry, we need to wrap up your comments.
Yes. So I just want you to just think what our town would look like without these things. Go to the library, go to the museum, go to the park, see how that feels closed. And remember what COVID was like. But this time we have a choice.
Thank you. Next, we have Micah Bay. Is Micah still here? Micah Bay?
He's out in the lobby.
Oh, no. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Is opposed to this item, does not wish to speak, but wants to have his interest noted. Thank you. So next up, we have Sydney Urata. Sorry, Sydney, I just, what's your last name?
Urrutia.
Urrutia, thank you.
That's okay. Well, thank you, Counselor and Aaron, for letting us speak. But yeah, my name is Sydney. My husband and I, we own Performex in the old Taylor's Drug Building on the corner. We moved to Independence about 3 years ago, started a family here, opened our business here. But we chose Independence on purpose. We chose Independence because it was a community we wanted to bet on with our business. A community that has parks, that has a library, that is investing in itself and is a place we want to raise our children, but also, you know, stake our livelihood in the downtown corridor. We're now in the process of looking at purchasing that building, and all of these conversations really do give me pause. And I just want to say that If we wanna continue to attract families, if we wanna continue to attract small businesses to our community, if we don't have parks and libraries, I would never have chosen this town.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, and then just with the parks, we have really cool events coming up, we have the hop run that's coming back, the cyclocross state championships, and just being a healthy community that people are traveling to do these things, we need parks. We need the library, my kids and I go all the time, it's a fantastic resource. I am in support personally of the fee, but more importantly, I'm in support of any way we can kind of keep our parks and our library alive. And then on a side note, to answer your question, Councilor Roden, when Mr. Ellis came to my front porch, I asked him directly, do you know what this fee is for? Me and my husband were told it was for 6 new positions, including a potential downtown city manager. He wasn't sure, but that's what he thought it was for. To the point where my husband signed the referendum because there was no communication also of the immediate consequences that would happen from this referendum going into effect. To where then we went and found him and got his name off it once we actually learned what the fee was for and what the immediate repercussions were for. So that was the information I was given, my family was given, and then that was the chain of events we had to go through to rectify the situation. Thank you.
Next up is Hannah Memphis Ware. Hello, my name is Hannah and I live in Independence. I've lived here for 6 years. And like she had said, when we first bought our house, we're right from down the street from the library, and that was a huge selling point for us. And we would not bought our house here if there were no library. And I was here with my 3 and 5-year-old, and I was fighting my life over there, so they're at the park, ironically. But I'm here because I'm terrified for their future if there's no library here in our community. I have used the library to print a resume when I entered back into the workforce. I used it as a way to socialize with other moms when I was in the thick of postpartum. There are many days that Miss Jo was my only adult interaction. And so, but aside from me, looking at the greater community, Oregon is ranked 3rd worst in literacy. And Central School District, 32% of Central students meet proficient reading levels. So when we look at the library, that's a vital resource for our future, for our kids. And I don't have the answer. I think there's a lot of misinformation and also barriers to understanding this problem. I also think that there's a lot of people who live in Independence who cannot vote, and so their voices are not heard here either. But aside from my privilege, I would want the fee. I'd happily pay it, and I think we can work together to find a solution. And I think that closing the library should not even be on the table. Thank you.
Next up we have Aaron.
Ellen Wayba, yeah,
Thank you, Aaron.
sorry, it's difficult to
No,
pronounce.
that's all right. How to pronounce it again?
Ellen Wayba. So hello there, as you know, my name is Aaron Wayba, and I'm a student at Central, but from what my peers and I have heard, the closure of the library is on the table, obviously now. This is really worrying to all of us because especially as youth, we see the importance of not just our library, but public spaces in general for the general sense of well-being and belonging in our community. And there really shouldn't be a place where library closure is on the table, as many people have brought up already. And just the fact that we're considering this is, I think, detrimental to our community alone. I have heard about this referendum and about a lot of the considerations on the table. And while I am in support of the fee if it's the last necessary step in keeping our library afloat, I do think that the fact that our city is considering this right now, oh, sorry, I'm from Monmouth, that your city is considering this right now is also a very worrying prospect. I think that when it comes to finances, many people, my peers and I have spoken to, have said throughout both of our cities that they are unsure of how the financial situation got to this point, and also that they're unaware for the most part of what is going on through this process. And so I think that being far more communicative, with the public and sharing what we can do as a city, I think that's a great first step, because the fact that there's such a gap in information right now is I think what's really driving this process. And so I just wanted to leave off and say, I'm not sure what the next steps are going to be. A lot of my peers aren't, but we hope that the library can be safe, that our parks can stay open, and that this community can still thrive. Because when it comes to finances, again, transparency should be key. And the fact that so far a lot of the public, at least in this area, is unaware of what's going on is again very worrying. So I'll leave it with this. I don't want to be accusatory at all, but my peers and I have also wondered if there's any chance that an audit potentially independently could at some point happen, just again to increase public transparency and make sure that we're all aware of what's going on. But with that, thank you very much.
I have a question for you. Have you ever considered joining DECA at Central High School or going on to Oregon State to be on the debate team? Because you're a very, very good speaker.
And just a point of clarification, we do have audits every year. That is a requirement that we do dispose of. So our books are audited every year by an outside source.
Aaron, we, at one point in time, I don't remember when we stopped it, it may have been COVID. We used to do a council meeting every year at the high school. And I think that's something we maybe wanna look at doing again. It was very, it didn't matter what our agenda was, the kids took it where they wanted to take it. And I think that's important because that's one way that we can reach students and they can tell us what their concerns are. Because unlike you, a lot of them don't come to our council meeting. So I think if we can bring our council meeting to you, maybe we could get some more communication out.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff. My name is Vicki McCubbin and I'm a resident of Independence. I could have never predicted that we as a community would be contemplating the abolishment of our public library. Or that the searing and sometimes vicious discussions would be taking place on social media. It saddens me that this is happening and I've had to step away from these conversations. Our children's library, Miss Jo, who several people have mentioned tonight, once told me of an African proverb that said, when elephants fight, the grass suffers. I think our grass is suffering because of this divisiveness. I understand that the imposition of a fee can be a financial burden and one that some in our community cannot sustain. I also believe that as a city and community, we could find ways to support those who truly cannot afford the extra expense. And it was discussed several times during meetings of the Community Services and Parks Sustainable Committee, the ad hoc committee that recommended this fee. Because I attended the budget meetings this year and last, I truly believe the council and budget committee carefully reviewed all viable scenarios and arrived at the best solution to keep the lights on in our library until another funding mechanism can be put into place. I also applaud the city for the fact sheets that have been put out, that have been paid for not by the city, but by the Friends of the Library and the Museum Society. I think it's been a transparent process. When people like the late city councilors, Marilyn Morton and Nancy Lodge, worked so hard to secure the funding for the current library, they had a vision of a library where people could come together as a community. And I think we need to keep the vision of those two forward-thinking councilors alive. As we consider the future of our library and independence, we all need to ask ourselves, what is community worth?
Next up we have Kelsey, sorry, I have to correct me.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Gillen-Grading. I'm a resident of Independence. I'm here today to express my support for the Independence Library and any measure the City Council deems necessary to ensure its operations continue. I voted in favor of the ballot measure almost 2 years ago and was extremely disappointed when it did not pass. I've been a resident of Indy for 10 years and I'm proud of our small but beautiful city. One of the things I love most about this place is how accessible and connected it is, and the Independence Library is vital to creating that sense of community. The library is in the truest form of the third place where people find community other than at home or at work. Losing this community gathering point would just make our community less connected. I also have a 2.5-year-old, and I wanted to grow up with a love of reading. I remember getting my first library card vividly and how it opened new worlds for me. Being able to walk to the Independence Library and connect with its wonderful staff are essential to creating the environment where fostering this love is possible. Part of why I love living where I do in Indy is because I'm walking distance to the services like the library, and it's been a reason I've been hesitant to move because I envisioned walking there with my son throughout his childhood. If the library was abolished, Independence would lose a crucial part of our community identity. Thank you for this time.
Next up, we have Jane Oppenberg.
Good evening, I'm Jane Oppenberg from Monmouth, and I use both libraries. You probably need to know that I spent my teaching years teaching chemistry and physics for a long time. So I have a quote from Albert Einstein. The only thing you absolutely have to know is the location of the library. Reading has a wealth of cognitive benefits. Declining literacy can affect everything from memory to IQ. A library is more than a service to a community. It provides free, equal access to knowledge and technology. It supports education, economic growth, and personal connection. There are great programs for children, story times, activities, crafts. And I'd like to share with you a couple of books. I made a list for family and friends with about 12 books on each page. By David McCullough, The Path Between the Seas, about the building of the Panama Canal. The French were involved from 1881 to 1889, and then the US began working from 1904 to 1914. As you can imagine, President Theodore Roosevelt went down to see how things were going along. And there are wonderful pictures throughout that book, as well as fabulous information about the building. But one of the comments was about the taking of pictures. That is, someone said, don't let President Roosevelt into one of those digging machines. And so one of the photos is Roosevelt in a white suit sitting in a digging machine. The other book is a history and fiction mixture called Iceberg. It is about a little girl who in 1912 sneaks aboard the Titanic. She's given a notebook by another passenger and starts making notes about the things she sees and hears. And yes, she does make it to New York, and her intention is to write an article in order to make money to send back home. And when you read at the end of the book, the list of true things about that ship, I challenge you to not say something to the effect that the White Star Company was derelict in their production of that ship.
Thank you so much.
So
We are at
a
time.
library is vital to our community, and closing it would be totally unconscionable, shocking, and morally wrong. So please, make sure we have a library that is a vital community entity.
Next up, we have Amanda West, who indicated would prefer not to speak. You are opposed to this item. Can I just clarify, are you opposed to the library closing or opposed to the?
To the library closing.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have Julie Sweeney.
Woof. Sorry, I make lots of noise these days. Let's see. Okay, my name is JJ Sweeney. I live in Independence. I'm a renter. I did not intend to speak, so I didn't write anything down. That's going to be a mistake, I'm sure. A little while ago, my water bill went up by $14 a month, and I was shocked, but because I didn't know why. Now I do. And despite being a very modest income disabled elder, I'm completely in favor of whatever it takes to keep the library open. To my mind, a city without a library is uncivilized. And as many people have so wonderfully stated tonight, a library in a town is a hub for the community. It's also a door to knowledge and a window to the world and the universe. I just keep it short. I think a town without a library, excuse me, is a town without a soul. Thank you.
Elijah Pettit.
This is my son, Elijah Pettit. He lives in Independence. And he's been waiting with every fiber of patience that he can muster tonight to talk to you guys. We had a long conversation today, after getting back from the library. They had an event today that the aquarium came and talked to us about all the different Amazon animals and where they would be. Was fabulous. If you didn't attend, you missed a real treat. Miss Jo was there and Elijah got to ask all of his wonderful questions. We talked a little bit when we got home about the impacts of potential closures, and he asked me, his number one question was, is it gonna close before there begins summer programs over in drawings? But he devours books, and so for us, the library is a place we can go and check books out, and they conveniently print how much money you save by checking the books out, and we have saved thousands and thousands of dollars more than $12 or $19 a month for sure, by far.
Yeah, point.
We also enjoy parks, which we have also been to today. You might not be able to tell because it is past bedtime. Elijah, would you like to say anything? You have a minute and 48 seconds.
I'm not that young. I'm trying to put it off.
It's tough to comment sometimes, especially at past your bedtime. But he wanted to stay all the way until his name was called so that he could tell you guys that.
Thank you, Mayor and the City Council. Patrick Fugman from Independence. Nobody likes taxes or fees, but there's no free lunch. When there's an event or a service, somebody has to pay for them. And while paying to attend a city concert is voluntary, driving on roads, paying for roads to be repaired in parts of town that we don't drive on, it's part of the infrastructure.
and we all have to pay for the infrastructure. And mentioned, I don't want to minimize costs that for people that might not have the means to accommodate the 18 or 19 or $12, whatever the exact number is. But as somebody mentioned that it's a ticket to the Independence Theater, that's without popcorn. A couple of cups of Starbucks coffee, maybe 2 gallons of fuel at the air park, maybe a Big Mac of McDonald's. I just can't imagine a city without a library and what it says to prospective businesses and employers. The young lady mentioned that earlier, that they wouldn't have moved here without the library. And as for the parks, the summer concerts are fantastic. What the city parks have is phenomenal. And it's where would the grandparents take their grandchildren safely if we don't have our parks? That's important to many of us grandparents. And anyway, I thought was maybe we could take some tape and put around one of the parks and say, this is where the fence will be if this passes. Thank you very much.
Next up we have Sonia Brubaker.
Thank you. Mayor and City Council, I appreciate this opportunity. My name is Simeon Brubaker and my wife and I live here in Independence and we're renters. And I'm still, just in the last couple of days, just trying to get understanding of what this whole fee, closing the library, blah, blah, blah. My wife and I are new to the community, well, the last couple of years, and we are regular users of the library. We appreciate our library and we refer to it as our library. And we also appreciate it's part of a larger group of regional libraries, which makes sense. I'm a retired construction engineer. I work Arizona, Pacific Northwest, Alaska. Every place I lived and worked, I got a library card. Everybody's got a regional library. So they're not by themselves. They're always paired up. So if I want a book and it's not here, but it's Silverton, a day or two later, I get it, or she gets it. But I'm reminded of some experiences I had nearly 50 years ago. I served in the United States Marine Corps in an infantry unit, and you guys refer to us as grunts, and I guess we were. And when you're a grunt, you spend a lot of time deployed. In my case, I was on American warships in the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Mediterranean Sea. And those amphibious ships had little libraries. Now, the Navy didn't buy us books or anything, it's just people donated and you checked them out and so on and so forth. And those were the days before internet, cell phones, TV, etc. So that's what people did. I mean, they read. So I find it really interesting that we can have a little library on an American warship for Marines and sailors out in the middle of nowhere, but we're questioning a library here in Independence, one of the oldest communities in Oregon. And in closing, this whole fee thing, I sort of learned over the last couple of hours for apartment owners or apartment dwellers like myself, $200 a year, it comes out to 55 cents a day. And when you go to the gas station or Walmart, I mean, you're many times over that. And in closing, fees and taxes are part of being an American citizen. Being part of being an American citizen. Civilization costs money, period.
Erin Riding. My name is Erin Riding and I am a resident and business owner here in Independence. And I want to just quickly address 3 groups here today. First, to City Council, whether we agree or disagree on the issues here, I just want to thank you for doing an often thankless job and for wrestling through these hard issues that are before us today. I want to quickly also address Greg Ellis and David Klein. I noticed that David Klein left after giving his comment. He stuck around to make sure that his voice was heard, but not to listen to the voices of his neighbors. I think we should take notice of that. In both of your tenures as city managers, you have mismanaged our city funds for years, and now because of that mismanagement, the referendum that you brought forward puts all of our neighbors at risk for losing invaluable community services that make all of us better. We cannot continue to rob Peter to pay Paul. We have to have hard conversations about balancing budgets while ensuring that important community services such as our parks and libraries remain open. Lastly, I want to address my community and my neighbors. I want to thank you for being here tonight. It was beautiful to hear your passion, your stories, and about your love for our community. I want to remind all of us that we are only as strong as our weakest members. When we remove public services, we create a society where only those with money, transportation, and other privileges have access to education, to leisure, to knowledge, to power, and to joy. That reality is unacceptable. I want to live in a community where all of us have equal access to these essential services that better all of our lives, and I'm willing to pay a fee to make sure that that happens. Thank you for your time. Jose Samaniego?
My name is Jose Samaniego, I'm a resident of Independence. And just to make it neutral and fair, I don't know who any of you are, I know that. You are somebody who represents from the city, so that makes it neutral. I do know why I'm here. It is to speak about the library. I am a grandfather of a 4-year-old who loves books. And I am an Army veteran. And I'm an extremely impressive person. And the reason to be alive is my granddaughter. She loves going to the library. She loves reading. And now I'm gonna veer off a little bit off, but it still correlates to this. I want everybody to really think about, especially the main people. Because I don't know who's the bad guy or the good guy here, but I want everybody to really think about this. A library is a place where we learn by reading and connecting words and knowledge from the past. To know how to defend ourselves, to know how to do something, how to develop, how to make something for ourselves, how to help somebody else. And now that we are in a world where it seems that it's perfectly fine because nobody's doing anything about it to abuse children, at least the library can teach our children to learn how to defend themselves. Since that other stuff is okay by our president, and I don't care who's against it, but because that's okay, the only defense that I see for my granddaughter and for all of our children is a library that can teach our children and the children of our children to defend themselves by reading and learning how to stand up for themselves and how to learn from the past, since our leaders don't know how the hell to do it. So we can learn. I learned from the library how to defend myself as a gay Latino, since everywhere I've always been discriminated against because I'm a gay man, because I'm a Latino, and it's always because I'm lesser than. And it affected me for many years. It doesn't anymore as much, but I will sure as hell not gonna allow anybody to do that to my grandmother. And just think about it, doing that to a library in any place, or specifically speaking of the city, is really detrimental to society and to this county alone, and to the people that live in the community. So I just want to ask, think about that, for whatever reasons, beyond your budgets and money and what's more important. Think about it, your children, your grandchildren, your future children, or even yourselves as young kids. Thank you.
Karen Steinberg and I live in Monmouth. But I grew up in Independence. And for about 6 years, I lived in Salem. And I completely just yearned to move back to Independence because this is home here. I do work for the city, but I'm off the clock. So I feel like I can say something. I'm in complete awe of this group of people that love our town, that have been voted in and have done their very best to do the very best. I just cleaned the building, you know, but I hear a little this, a little that. I can slip in and I can talk to you. I can talk to Kenna. I talk to Chief often. I mess with all the officers. I am honored to work here because of who is here and how in depth you all care. And I was a single mom, and so I didn't have finances and we couldn't afford cable, so we would go to the library. I'm terrible, I'm not a reader, but there's more to the library than reading, and we would just borrow movies. You know, that's what our entertainment was, and it was free. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I get to be at the library during story time. I'm grateful that if I clean it at night, there's homeless out there charging their phone. And I have a heart for the homeless people because they're just people like us. They just don't have a house. And so real quick, I have a lot of family in a neighboring city that does not have a library. And I have a lot of kids that live up there in my family. And they run the streets, the kids run the streets. There's literally nothing for them to do. The schools are in deep trouble because they don't have the support of a library. And the parks and the museum, all of that is important. But we tend to pick at the library more. That it's vital. It's vital. And I often, because I have a heart for that little town, I often wonder what I can do for that little town, and it takes more than just me. But we have a group of people here that are amazing. And I'm really proud of to know them. And I'm in both. I'd pay the fee anyway, and I don't live here. You can take it out of my check.
I do want to sincerely thank the community for showing up tonight. I know it's not easy to give up several hours on a weeknight to come and listen to this. I appreciate that everyone was thoughtful and respectful. And I hope people continue to follow along with this very important topic. I now declare the record and hearing closed at 8:58 p.m. The next item we have on our agenda, which I don't accept people to stick on board with you or welcome to, we did have an executive session, so we will be even if those that before we come back, for action from that. For agenda item 7.3, I know.
It's late for everybody.
Why don't we say?
We want it. We'll do 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, we're live.
All right, thank you so much. We are reconvening from our break. Agenda item 7.3, the governing body will meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. Executive sessions are closed to the public. Representatives of the news media and the designated staff may attend except as otherwise provided by law. All information discussed in the executive session is confidential and may not be disclosed. With that, we will recess for
You're live.
Oh. All right, thank you. With that, we're moving on to 7.4, potential action from the executive session, with the state negotiations, city manager votes.
I move to authorize the city manager to continue negotiations for the sale of the museum.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Source and a second by Councilor Martin Willis. Can we get roll call?
Counselor Court? Aye. Counselor Martin Willis?
Aye.
Counselor Boisvert?
Aye.
Counselor Roden? Aye. Counselor Source?
Aye.
All right. That motion passes. Moving on to council announcements. Okay, well, we're gonna start at the end and go there.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the listening session Councilor Boisvert and I have been doing. We've done the farmers market twice, and then we had a little listening session with the community with a bunch of neighbors around Sunset Meadows Park. Sunset Meadows Park, we stayed for about 2.5 hours answering all sorts of questions. But it was a great conversation, and it's very clear that the community wants to be involved in this conversation. So I just wanted to share that with my colleagues and thank the community for coming out and talking to us about all sorts of things. And we're gonna continue to do it, so either one of us will be at the next few farmers markets, and if people want to invite us out to hang out at a park or near a park, if the parks are closed, we're happy to do that.
Another city.
Oh, yeah. Well, we don't wanna have quorum. Correct.
No,
Don't wanna have quorum.
Two at a time.
I'm gonna cover for, Councilor Weber a couple times.
So I just wanted to state something I stated at the last city council meeting we had. I have only made one anonymous post on any social media, and it was about my daughter who was hit on the 4th of July. She is still recovering from being hit on the 4th of July. She is still bruised and injured, and it's a terrible situation. I guess there was a post though, accusing current city councilors, specifically me, and past city councilors that we are posting and being debating city council things online. And so I contacted the administrators of the Facebook post or any other posts and asked them, if you ever see me anonymously saying anything on there, call me out. I've never done it. I won't do it. If I ever say anything publicly, other than that one post I did on my daughter, I'm breaking the rules that we have in council. So I would not do that. So I've asked them to do that. I think it's fair for them to do that, and I would never debate online as a city councilor anonymously. Never would. Like I said, the only time I've ever done anything anonymously was for the protection of my daughter.
Just wanted to say that as a community member and a volunteer and an advocate for the city or the community, knowing what's going on, not only am I doing the Saturday farmers market here, but also I've been going to the concerned citizens groups that are meeting at the library on Thursday evenings at 5, yes. So I just encourage folks to come out. And again, it's a way that you can get involved as a community and get questions answered. Thank you.
To Councilor Roden's point about the scooters, that was a big topic of conversation at the mayor's conference, where a lot of communities are grappling with how do they regulate the scooters, the e-bikes, particularly on like streets, sidewalks, kids, helmets, no helmets, and it's huge conversation. So hopefully we can, I know that the League of Oregon Cities is working on putting better language around that, so if we don't really share that out, because it is a big issue.
And just to follow, I appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate City Manager West coming out to talk to me about it too, because if I can help you guys advocate for change, then I would like to. I'm not kidding when I say my daughter is still injured. So.
was charged security, but I was never pulled.
Oh, yeah. Further announcements? Alright. I do wanna make sure people saw that as part of the record, we do have correspondence that was submitted by Melinda Schwartz, just making sure everybody saw that. And let's, we are adjourned.
Thank you.